My husband wants to raise our child athiestic, but I want our child to make their own decisions. It's driving a wedge between us. How do we proceed? Yes, we had this conversation prior to having children, and I thought we agreed that we would allow them to make their own choice without us inserting their own opinion. Seems I misunderstood, or he's changed his mind. Our son is starting to ask questions about spirituality. I was raised Christian home and consider myself agnostic. When our son asks questions about Jesus, I answer them in a Christian point of view and always preface it, well, Christians believe, etc. We are in the Bible Belt, so our son is primarily surrounded by Christian friends and family, but our household is not. I do not wish to insert my own opinion upon him whatsoever and want him to make his own choice in this matter. My husband is a die-hard atheist who is absolutely certain there is no God, though I have never heard him declare that to our son. My husband overheard a conversation where I was telling our son about what Christians believe in regards to heaven/hell. I prefaced it the same as I always do. Christians believe. And some people believe. When he asked me again if there is a heaven or hell, I just asked him, "What do you think?" I really try and not make his opinion for him, because I know the slightest given opinion from me may very well change his whole world. Frankly, as an agnostic, I don't want to be responsible for anyone's potentially existing soul, even my own children's. I want them to make that choice themselves, as an adult. After overhearing this conversation, my husband spoke to me afterwards and got extremely upset that I did not shoot this idea of heaven or hell down entirely. Not angry/pissed/yelling, but he was clearly irate that I would bother giving religious points of view at all. I reiterated that I thought we agreed to raise our child free of our own opinions, and he said that if we do that, our child will grow up to become a Christian free of any other influence, considering we live in the Bible Belt. While he's not entirely wrong, I'm not really sure what he wants the outcome to be. We talked for a while longer and I straight up asked if he still wanted to allow our child to grow up free of our own religious opinions, and he said sure, but I feel like you're giving an unequal share of consideration to Christianity. But that's literally all my child asks about, because it's all he's exposed to here in the South. I feel completely cornered. We agreed to raise our son free of my agnostic opinions, and free of his atheistic opinions, but my son only ever asks Christian-oriented questions because we live in the Bible Belt. My husband feels I am raising him to be a Christian because I answer his Christian-based questions from a Christian point of view. I want him to make his own decisions and have never but in mine. I feel like this is driving a wedge between us. How do I proceed? Now for the top comments. If you only say what Christians believe and not other points of view, you're hardly giving him an unbiased perspective in which to come to his own opinion. If you just say Christians believe, he may not even know what an alternative view is. That's not really letting him decide on his own or being unbiased. By trying to keep your views out of it but not other views, you're actively steering him in a different direction. You don't have to say I don't believe, but could still do something like Christians believe in a heaven and hell. Jews don't believe in them in a traditional sense, and many people don't have any religion at all, and most of them don't believe in heaven or hell, just as an off-the-cuff example, not a perfect one. If you stop after only explaining what Christians believe, you're doing him and yourself a disservice. I also think it's pretty silly to try to stay totally out of it in the first place, as that essentially means you'd rather let the views of your neighbors dictate his views rather than sharing any of your own. Next comment. I do try and give other opinions, where appropriate. Frankly, atheism, agnosticism, and Christianity are about the only spiritual beliefs/disbeliefs I am familiar with. By association to Christianity, I'm also familiar with Judaism. But that's about it. I know the basics of the other major religions, like I read a Wikipedia page or 3 on it in YouTube video or 2. Enough to answer extremely basic questions and, when applicable, I try to provide that information. Unfortunately, most of our son's questions are specific to Christianity, like, how did Jesus come back to life? For example, hard to explain that from a Buddhist point of view, considering they have no opinion on Jesus or whether or not he came back to life. Also, I appreciate your last paragraph. Truly, I do. The reason I've chosen this path as a parent is because I went to a Christian school for 15 years and still didn't wind up a Christian. If I can do that, they too can make their own choice. Personally, in my own spirituality I have not been exposed enough to other religions, and basically I have absolutely no reason to be anything other than an atheist/agnostic or a Christian. The other religions sound like complete hogwash to me because I have no cultural connection with them, if that makes sense. When I am on my deathbed, I will be panicked that I will come before the Christian God instead of the void. No other gods will be on my mind. This is cultural indoctrination doing its work on me. There's no rational reason why I fear the Christian God more than I do Allah, or reincarnation. That's why I don't want to indoctrinate my child into any one belief or the other, especially considering I'm agnostic, and if souls do exist, I don't want to be responsible for them. Next comment. By saying what Christians think, in isolation, you're still lending credibility to it. If my kid asked me how you can fall off the side of the earth, I wouldn't say flat earthers think, I'd debunk it, because it's nonsense. And if I discovered that we lived in a neighborhood of flat earthers, I certainly wouldn't sit back and let my kids absorb their nonsense. Being agnostic or atheist means you've rejected many if not all of the basic tenets of religious faith. To withhold your beliefs, or lack thereof, from your child sounds like you have good intentions that are leading to a poor result, pushing him toward faith rather than staying in neutral territory. You're captain of your child's ship, but don't want to steer lest you be judged for exerting any control, while ignoring the fact that there is an incredibly strong wind that will force the ship in a specific direction if you don't take the wheel. You say you went to a Christian school and didn't wind up a Christian. The reverse is certainly possible as well, that you can teach your kid what your thoughts on religion are and still end up with them deciding to join a faith later in life. That is letting them decide, not by avoiding any sort of influence in the first place. Next comment. When your son asks questions, as he's bound to, no matter how you answer, it is going to be the answer he learns. When you answer with the Christians believe answer, you are in fact teaching him Christianity. Of course he asks questions related to what he hears Christian friends saying, because that's what he is exposed to. But then you are just reinforcing that the Christian version is the right answer. You are saying here is, in detail, what Christians believe. Other people may believe other things, but those things are irrelevant. You cannot claim to be allowing your child to make their own decision if you only expose them to one option. You are only exposing your son to Christianity. You are leaving a door barely cracked open, telling him that not everyone believes the same as Christians believe, but you aren't giving him any of the tools to be able to actually decide for himself. Next comment. Well then Op's husband needs to bear some of the burden of learning every other religion's beliefs and relating that to their son. She knows Christianity. Her son only asks about Christianity. She answers with what she knows about Christianity. If her husband feels like she's not doing a good enough job, then he needs to follow up with the additional perspective he feels she missed. He's like the person who doesn't like cooking complaining about what you made for dinner. If he thinks he can do a better job, by all means. Next comment. I mean, it is okay to tell the child your opinions. For both of you, for husband and you, it is okay to tell the kid what you two believe in. And tell the kid about differences between you two. Even if you won't tell, schoolmate will tell, friend will tell, parents of others' kids will tell what they think. Your son is asking only Bible questions, because in his world only Christians willing to talk about their opinions openly. Atheists and agnostics remove themselves from conversation and keep their opinions secret. To large extent, you are trying to make him free to make own opinion by keeping him ignorant of everything you have learned. Like common, your kid will be free to choose music and books he will like. But that does not mean you can't discuss or show him books or albums from artists you like. Next comment. It definitely feels like you are backdoor trying to force religious views on the child under the guise of keeping it neutral. It's not clear how old your son is, but I'm guessing quite young, so I can understand the need to dance around the subject if you don't want to be direct. The problem being, if you live in a Bible Belt area, the zealots will have no issue forcing their opinion down a child's throat. While you can't necessarily use Buddhism to talk about Jesus, you could look at it from a Jewish perspective, where unofficially he has been cast among other things as a false prophet. Quick Google search brought that one up, but I think in general they just don't acknowledge him. I'm clearly not a Jewish person, so happy to be corrected, or the Muslim faith where he is seen as a prophet but not the Son of God. As your son gets older, you should discuss cults, and the dangers of them. If you want to do the whole Christians believe, why not start it? Not everyone believes in a heaven and hell, as it can be seen as a way to control people through fear, however Christians believe. I understand your son may be too young for that deep a level of explanation, but you can still start it in a way that shows that others believe in a certain way before reinforcing the Christian beliefs, which is what you are essentially doing when you start the way you do. Next comment. Most people who are religious are the same religion as their parents, because that is the environment they grow up in. They are taught to believe. If your kid doesn't go to church, doesn't take part in religious traditions or rituals, or have any emotional connection to a belief system, he's being raised atheist. You're teaching him he's an atheist by not being a part of any religious community. That said, it seems oddly cowardly to not tell your own kid what you yourself believe, when he outright asks you. He's asking you because he wants to know what you think, because you're people he trusts. Why not just be honest and say, I was raised to believe X, but now that I'm older I think Y. You can add what do you think, or that's something you can learn about and decide as you get older, or whatever as needed. Next comment. Because of where you live, I think your husband needs to realize that, like it or not, socializing your kid to understand the spiritual practices of his peers, irrespective of whether he chooses to follow those practices, is overall good for his development/social integration. Even the starkest atheist would have to admit that they cannot definitively prove the existence or lack thereof of God. Therefore, your husband's rationalist perspective is truly no different than a Christian attempting to rationalize existence through believing in the Bible. Sadly, based on your husband's response, it sounds like atheism is his religion, and just like all zealots, he acts as if he alone has a lock on the truth. Next comment. Is there a heaven and a hell? Well, depends on your definition. Generally speaking, in the majority Christian area, that would mean the biblical definition, which isn't really a definition at all really, but it's one that I can work with. The only acceptable answer is, I don't know. It's impossible for any living person to know, and if anyone ever tells you that they know for sure, they're either lying, delusional, or, much more likely, gullible. So-called near-death experiences are not convincing either, because they're not even exclusive to those who are dying. So, the answer is, there is no answer. Now hell, on the other hand, is very real. Anyone can go and corroborate the existence of hell. It's in Michigan. Next comment. I was raised atheist in a Christian environment. I would have questions about Jesus, the saints, heaven and hell, God, and my parents would explain the story and make it clear these things were part of my classmates' religion, not ours, that we didn't have a religion. They would also ask me what I thought about the stuff I brought up, so sometimes I still learned something from the religion around me, sometimes I became critical of it, which is part of making up your mind, but I was 7/8 at that point. We would talk about it together. But they always let me know, we were not part of that religion, and told me, for example, I wasn't baptized, but also no other religious rituals would have been performed on me as a kid, no bath in the Gange, no circumcision if I had had a penis. This story in particular helped me understand there are different religions and traditions, and we didn't ascribe to them. Next comment. The problem with raising child to make their own choices about religion, is that, well, it is not possible. It sounds great and everyone agrees with it, but it's not possible. In order for a person to believe in something that is not rational and cannot be seen or proven, they need to be told to believe in it by parents who believe in it, whatever it is. I am an atheist who sent their child to a very relaxed Christian school, best school in the area, and I wanted him to make his own choices. My other reason for not raising him directly as an atheist was that I thought if something happens to me, I would prefer if he thinks Mom is in heaven watching over him, rather than completely gone. For this reason, I would not really mind if he ended up believing. As a result, I would answer his questions the way you did, in a neutral way. However, I would not initiate conversations about that particular religion, because I don't believe in it. He also did not see us praying because we don't. He had some questions as he was growing up, and at the age of 9 he told me that there is no God. He said he hears people talking about it at school, but he thinks it's all a nonsense. Your son will not be a believer, because neither you or your husband is. At best he will be confused for a few years and he will end up like you. The real problem is that it will make him feel different from everyone else, and the lessons where teachers talk about faith will be hard for him. It really does not matter if you tell him Christians believe it or if you tell him this is all a lie, he will end up the same. Next comment. My parents are agnostics/atheists. I learned about Christianity at school, internalized it, and my parents didn't interfere. It cost me a lot of childhood trauma, knowing that my parents are sinners according to Christianity and will go to hell. If you want to teach your child about religions, don't focus only on Christianity. You can explore Buddhism, Hindu, Shinto, read Greek/Egyptian/Celtic mythology, etc. When your child asks about issues related with death, it's better to stick to the scientific facts, and then you can explore further into spirituality. If your child asks about plants, do you say some people believe fairies live in the bushes? Probably not.